now you got 32 clients. Now you got 40 clients. Now you're like, with all those clients, you obviously need to scale. You can't maintain that yourself. And so your point was scaling, hiring, growing. It's not as scary as you think.
Enjoy this clip from 2 Pixels Off, a podcast for creative entrepreneurs.
Okay, I love this. Good transition. That's like if we were in a hockey game right now and you had the puck and you were going from defense to offense, you want to transition. That's what you just did. It was so masterful.
Wasn't it?
So
I didn't
masterful.
go offside. Like I was on a break.
No, nobody's offsides. Everybody's skating in unison. It's a beautiful game.
I love it.
Beautiful game.
It is.
Okay.
It's a dance.
Let's talk about scaling and that it's not as scary as you might think. I was so scared to hire my first employee, like deathly afraid. My first year in business, I did 220 in revenue, 220 grand in revenue. My second year, I did 240 grand in revenue. And then I finally started hiring people. It was like time. I was like, okay, I got money in the bank. I paid off my house. I was like just grinding, doing all the work myself. And I was stressed out of my mind. And I finally hired my first person, and I was scared to death of that. It was a high school kid who came over after school, and he was good at computers, and I taught him some stuff, and he grew into that. I think I shared some of that in the last episode. Anyway, the growth started to happen after I got over my fear of hiring. So I went from 1 employee to 5 employees by the end of that first year of hiring and had my first studio space. I was afraid of hiring my first full-time employee because I was sitting there thinking, I'm going to share a couple of paradigms that I went through. I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, hiring a $60,000 a year employee, I have to make 60 grand more per year to make ends meet. That means if I was doing 240 grand on my own, now I have to do 300 grand a year just to make the same amount of money. How am I ever going to do that? That was my fear. And so I resisted hiring people until I switched the paradigm and started to realize that I was not hiring a $60,000 a year employee. I was hiring a $5,000 per month trial run for 3 months. That's what I was trying. 5 grand a month is 60 grand per year. My risk was not $60,000 on this employee. My risk was, I'm going to try this person out for 3 months. At 5 grand a month, I'm risking $15,000 on this employee experiment. And if the experiment goes well, then Sally is going to be making the business more money, making my life better. Everything's going to be better because Sally was great. If it does not go well, then Sally hates me and I probably hate Sally, and we decide to part ways after 3 months, and I'm out 15 grand. I'm not out 60 grand. I'm not going to keep a bad cylinder for for a year and spend $60,000. I'm not going to do that if it's not a fit. And so I changed this mindset and I started to look at my numbers a little differently. I started to think, okay, I have, let's say, $75,000 in the bank. And I wanted to keep around 60 in the bank for my business churn. That means I had 15 grand sitting in my bank account right there that I could experiment with by hiring Sally for 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, Sally's either going to be awesome and I would rather pay her than myself, or Sally is going to not be good and I'd rather let her go, and she probably is going to leave anyway because if I hate it, she hates it. So that's the way that went. Now, you can look at these numbers a variety of different ways. You can look for that amount in your monthly profit. So take a look at your numbers and say, for the next 3 months, I have 5 grand of projected profit. I have a bunch of retainers. Let's say you want to take home 10 grand for yourself, and you have 15 grand in revenue projected for this month, next month, and the month after because you have some retainers. You want 10 for yourself. You have 5 to play with to hire Sally. Or you could look at it and say, I have 65 in the bank. I'm willing to risk 5 of it. And over the next 3 months, I have 10 grand of profit that I can play with to hire Sally. Once I started to do that, it wasn't nearly as scary hiring people as what I thought it was going to be, because I was not making an annual risk. I was making a 3-month risk. And lo and behold, all my first employees were freaking awesome. And I kept them long term, as long as they wanted to stay. In fact, one of those first employees is still at my agency. I left there 6 years ago, and he's still there. He's the tech director at the agency that I sold to, that then got sold to another agency, and he's the tech director at the third owner of my agency. So it's some of these people will stay long term. Some of them you'll let go. Some of them won't work. Some of them won't work for them, and they'll leave. But you got to look at it in 3-month increments, not in my big load for an entire year.
I like that. So it's like you don't see it as this big upfront expense that you can't afford, because that means less money for you, and you're already, comfortable or maybe tight, so you can't afford it. But it's actually looking at it as a it's a smaller risk with a shorter term, and say in this case, $15,000 is way easier to stomach than a $60,000 upfront obligation, which it is not.